Hello. So I am still a little bit gunky from my last child-born illness. So that gives me an excuse to carry on with the category that for me seems to come back quickest to my nose and palate, namely Big Oaky whiskey, especially from America. And in particular, we're going to do some wild turkey today. We're going to do some of the hottest releases to come out of wild turkey in the last couple of years. What do we got? We have got the new Russell's Reserve 15-year-old, bottled at 58.6%. So this is the standard wild turkey recipe, kept in barrel for 15 years. And as a sparring partner, we've also got the the, what is it, 2020 edition of the Master's Keep the Bottle and Bond 17-year-old at 50% alcohol by volume. Now, where do I start with this? So I love wild turkey. I think that has to do a lot with their still strength. I think, bourbon nerds are prone to talking about their barreling strength at turkey, which is pretty darn low by industry standards. We're talking high 50s, alcoholic strength wise. But I think more important than that is the spirit actually comes off. They're still in the low 60s. I think it's something like 62, 63%, somewhere in there, which is, that's not that much higher than like Armagnac levels. That is, by bourbon standards, really, really characterful spirit. And that brings with it, obviously a ton of character and a capacity to age 50. Age quickly. My phone is blowing up for some reason. Go away. So Turkey 101, which is, probably 4 years old at most, delivers an extraordinary level of maturity for its age. And I think that just has to do with, characterful bourbons, just, or bourbons with a lot of congeners, got a lot of still character, just tend to mature a little bit faster. But there's a flip side to that, which is I've always been a little bit scared of older turkey, which both of these are, 15 and 17. So here is the question. Is the character of turkey just going to turn these into total unsavory oak bombs and lose all that freshness, which I really enjoy? Or are these actually going to be good? I don't know. I have not tasted these yet. We're going without notes. Oh, and there's one more thing. One more little thing. I felt like these two needed yet another sparring partner, so I'm going to pop this little sample, very, 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 very generously given to me. This is a sample I've been holding on for, I think, well over a year at this point. It's the absolutely legendary Wild Turkey 101 12-year-old. This was on sale through the 80s into the 90s and is now known by Wild Turkey nerds as the Cheesy Gold Foil edition. Now, let me say something about that, because I don't think the foil on those bottles was actually particularly cheesy at all. Maybe I've just been hanging around with BiB packaging for too long. It looks pretty good to me. If you want examples of 80s gold excess, you can do much worse than the than the old Turkey 12-year-old labels. Anyways, this is an absolutely legendary bottling series. This is distillate from the 70s. So the really old distillery, bottled at 50.5%. This is the warm-up, and this is this is going to establish the bar for these other two to clear. I am super duper excited, and I just realized I didn't bring my Sharpie with me, so I'm going to use my handy notepad here to take scores. Sometimes you got to throw these things together, All right, let's nose the legend. Cheesy Gold Foil, Wild Turkey 101 12-year-old. On the nose. Oh, that is pretty. It's So there's really two things going on in here that are wrapping around each other. One is a hell of a lot of fruitiness right off the bat. You're getting a lot of orangey stuff. You're getting orange peel, but also like a little bit of tangerine. You're getting cherry. You're getting almost some nectarine notes, some stone fruit in there. Apricot even. It's a hell of a lot of fruit. Fried plantain. But there's also this intense, earthy, like musty character to it. So it's almost as if like a giant fruit explosion in the middle of like like a musty abandoned warehouse or something. Very dusty, very woody, vanilla, dried cherry. Just sawdust, old boards. I mean, with the exception of the amount of vanilla coming off on this, you hand this to me blind. I'm thinking, Southwest France. I'm thinking Cognac, Armagnac, that kind of stuff. And a good one too. Almost a little bit of dried strawberry coming out too. A certain amount of almost like something root vegetable-y, but almost like a carrot cake kind of thing. Yeah, there's some carrot cake going on in here. Cinnamon, allspice, clove. Some intense graininess, almost like some of the you walk down to the local bakery here in Chicago, the artisanal bakery, and buy that loaf of multigrain bread that costs like $15. That's what this smells like. It's a terrific nose. Are we talking like 97 point nose yet? I don't know. I just had this open, so maybe, but we'll see. On the palate, it's still going. Like initial impression is there might be a hair too much wood on this for me, which makes me a little bit worried about the 15 to 17. If this is what a 12-year-old tastes like. Yeah, there's a lot of wood. It almost throws this off balance, but there's so much fruit on here again, and so much just other little details here. The kind of floral notes, the little hints of like potpourri, almost a post-war perfume or something like that. That's able to hold the balance despite the kind of overload of oak and like just really long oaky finish. Let me try this again because that was a lot. Mm-hmm. This is very, very good. By the way, I know like turkey nerds like to distinguish years on these. I don't know which year this was. I just know it was one of the cheesy gold foil ones. What are we getting here? Again, tons and tons of fruit. We're leaning more in the oak territory in terms of the balance here. So let me talk about the oak first. Yeah, campfire ash that's been like doused with vanilla ice cream. And then like you poured some very nice dried lemons on top of your ashy vanilla ice cream. That's a lot of what's going on. There's a little bit of mustiness here, but not as nearly as much as on the nose. Yeah, I mean, the nose really smells like an old, like wooden basement or something. But on the palate, it's much more like the wood is much more like alive and kind of ash driven. Um, Overstewed English breakfast tea. Even some honey in there, like a little bit of a wildflower honey kind of note, creeping it, but like mingling with the tea elements, sort of. Some old coffee grinds in there as well. I'm gonna get to the fruit though. Lots of fruit as well. Kind of just barely holding the tide. A battle against the wood. We are talking cherries. We are talking some peach and nectarine. We are talking the fried plantain kind of thing. Orange peel once again. So it's a little squirt of lime in there as well. Whew. Other I'm forgetting all my other fruits. I did cherry, maybe some like red plum as well. I hate to say it because it's an inside joke. Tamarind, yeah, there's some dried tamarind in here. Shout out to my friends in the Bourbon chat on the A-Fish Discord. Tamarind, there's just that kind of carrot cake thing as well. The multi-grain, the intense graininess as well, although that's more of a background note. And yeah, those little hints of floral elements, kind of, which I love in turkey. That's one of the things I love. Kind of just weaving through this little touch of potpourri and cologne in there. And yeah, terrific mouthfeel, just completely dominates my palate. Good mouth length. If I was going to knock this, I would say I would expect this to get a little bit further and tickle my my throat a little bit more, but it's still pretty darn good. And the finish, like it feels like there's just a lot of wood, but if you're paying attention, like it's kind of everything else, including the flowers, that kind of sustains just as well as those really aggressive wood tannins. So it's a little bit like tasting I don't know, like a super young Saint-Emilion or something, like a really hardcore red wine, and the tannins tear your mouth out, and you're like, this is just never going to come around. But you notice, also the fruit and some of those other nice things, they are also holding alongside the tannins. It's a little bit like that. Part of me is terrified to give this water because it's a little bit of a legend. But damn it, I'm a reviewer and I have a job to do, so we're going to give this 2 squirts of water. We'll come back to it. In the meantime, we're going to move on to this Master's Keep 2020, the 17-year-old Bottled and Bond modern turkey. This would have been distilled in the early aughts, I guess. All right. This is the bar. Let's see if these very pricey modern releases can meet it. I should have brought a tissue. Oh well, still just a little bit sniffly. So to my surprise, this actually smells fresher on the nose than the 12. I'm getting a lot of like lemon zest happening here, orange zest as well. I mean, there's certainly some woodiness. There's some sawdust and vanilla flying around. Little touches of dried cherry again. Even some Kirschwater, like cherry brandy. But it's so there is absolutely some woody elements happening, but it doesn't have that kind of same musty cellar kind of depth that I was getting in the 12. It's much more kind of, yeah, it smells fresher. Like if you had just on the nose, this does not smell like a 17-year-old bourbon to me. I mean, a lot of this is coming out of my trauma with Elijah Craig 18-year-old, which spent years forcing myself to try to like. I was like, it's 18 years old. It has to be good. I'll just buy one more bottle. This one will treat me nice. And it was like drinking a 2x4. This is not that. This is very, very fresh. We're also getting a little bit of almost a papaya note on this. Little whispers of nectar. The fruit is much more subtle here. Everything is kind of much more subtle on this, actually. Papaya, mango, maybe. Fresher cherry. Peach. Yeah, this is not one I would, in a blind, I don't think I would mistake this for a Southwest French brandy, but there's little nods in that direction. There's something like that in the form of this. Cinnamon, black pepper, stewed black tea, and that little hint of floral perfume that I just like on my turkeys and have come to expect on my turkeys. Sorry. So yeah, overall, I mean, it certainly smells like a good wild turkey, but it's much more restrained than the 12-year-old was on the palate. Again, so we're talking 50% alcohol. Ooh. Spicy boy. Yeah, okay, so I feel like I'm on Arrakis where spice is life. This is very, very spicy on the palate. Lots of black pepper, lots of cinnamon, cardamom, clove, allspice, just running through across my palate. It does feel woody as well. You've got a little bit of that kind of overstewed tea wood tannin kind of thing happening. But really it's the ages and the woodiness is manifesting as spice rather than like tannins. Oh, there's a fair amount of tannins on this. Don't get me wrong. I've got my floral perfuminess thing. We're checking that off. Fruit, yeah. Although again, not as much as the 12-year-old. This is much less like a big old pile of fruit fighting against big old pile of wood, as like you got some fruit there as detail, but it's really like the woodiness seeming to have more dimension to it, if that makes sense. It's not that less complicated, but it's a very different profile. All the spices I just named. Fruit, orange peel, peppery, spicy peach, some kind of dried fruit. What am I thinking of? Oh, I just tried dried pineapple off on my daughter recently for her school lunches. She hated them. I don't like them that much, but I see the value in it as a tasting note. Dried pineapple, a little bit of mango too. Maybe like dried mango. Maybe, sure. Coffee cake. There's some graininess in there. Coffee cake, but also some coffee elements. Fresh coffee grinds as opposed to the used one. More in this 12-year-old. So we're talking like You just ground up some fresh, South American Colombian coffee, maybe with some a little bit of Costa Rica in there, maybe some Centrals in there, and just a hell of a lot of cinnamon. In terms of mouth presence, again, it's also very filling on the palate, but in a different way because it's so darn spicy and peppery in terms of how it's behaving. It might actually have a better mouth length than the 12-year-old. The finish isn't quite as monumental. It's a good finish, but it's like a normal good finish, as opposed to this thing which just hangs and hangs and hangs. It's really fun to try these together because, I mean, there's family resemblances, right? Sort of, if I maybe put my Wittgenstein hat on for a while, but they're also just, they feel stylistically like very different kinds of whiskeys. So I'm going to give that 2 squirts, and we're going to move on to the new kid on the block. Step by step. Were you there for that? Are you old enough for that? Russell's Reserve, 15-year-old. They never really improved on the original, did they? Sorry. Reminiscing about boy bands. All right, Russell's Reserve 15, 58.6% alcohol by volume. Let's see what we got here. I really need a tissue. Again, kind of different. And this one really smells like aggressively overstewed black tea. I mean, that's the main note here. You got yourself some a really nice black tea blend. Maybe took some Awesome and some Darjeeling and blended them all together. And you just let them kind of brew and stew for like half an hour in water you just kept on boil. That's kind of what this smells like. No, there's more to this than that. So black pepper, cinnamon. I'm also getting a little bit of is that basil or peppermint? Let's say both. A little bit of basil, a little bit of peppermint. You mingled them a little bit. Touch of like banana chip, maybe. It certainly smells nippier than the previous two, which makes sense. I mean, this is a little bit stronger. Cherry, vanilla, burned sawdust. And yeah, the tamarind thing that the Bourbon Chat folks love so much, tamarind is definitely in the house on this. A little bit of fig as well, actually. Interesting. I've got my florals, my little perfumey note. Yeah, it's the tea. It's really on the tea and the kind of minty basil-y thing where this is making a bit of a difference from these previous two. Kind of apparently blowing up. I should check what's going on. Hopefully. Let's finish this off quickly. All right, on the palate. My wife wants to let me know that we should book tickets for the next Hubbard Street Dance show, which we should because Hubbard Street Dance is awesome. So much more just aggressive and mean on the palate than the previous two. Not to say the 12 was like a weakling by any stretch of the imagination. But the extra, nearly 10% alcohol, it's definitely making itself shown. And yeah, it just feels like it's a different, again, it's a different profile again versus the previous one. Take the best pot of Southern sweet tea you have ever had. Okay? And then you're going to take like a spoonful of like topsoil. Just dump it in there. You're going to take some, and you're going to take a drop of vanilla, like really good vanilla extract. Drop that in there too. And then a drop of like old school post-war cologne. Put that in there too. That's what this tastes like. It's a bit of a brute. Lots of pepper too. Black pepper all over the place. And it does have that kind of like basil meets peppermint kind of thing. It's a little bit more leafy than these previous two. Fruit-wise, yeah, the figs are still showing up. The dried cherry, tamarind, banana chips. Dried pineapple. It's funny because this is, when I drink this, immediate impression is it just kind of feels bigger and bolder and stronger than the previous two. But then you kind of look at the details of how it develops in the mouth, and you kind of realize maybe it doesn't quite hold up to scrutiny as well. Good mouthfeel. It's a mix of the kind of the woody tannic thing and the spicy thing. Like a lot of cinnamon, cardamom, clove, all that kind of stuff. We're kind of mixing those two up. It isn't quite as good as the previous two. Mouth length is very good. Kind of up there with a 12-year-old. Maybe not up there with the 17. Finish is also very good. I think it's up there with the 17-year-old. Maybe not up there with the 12. Lots of like, chocolatey s'mores, campfire treats kind of character to this. In some ways, this feels like the most modern bourbon of this lineup. Like if there was one that the BTAC folks would be chasing after, this is it. This is the one that's coming close to that profile. Not to say that anyone's gonna prefer anyone except maniacs like me are gonna prefer this over Stag or something. But just to give you some idea, this is doing more that kind of campfire cherry thing than any of these others. So there's a deliciousness factor here if you're into that, and bear that in mind. Mm-hmm. Okay, give that some water and we'll come back to it. You'll need 5, right? Yeah, I'll go 5. 5 squirts. And second verse, same as the first. Back to the 12. I am very, very, very curious to see what this does with the water. It does feel a bit, sacrilegious. Shout out to Two Set Violin. Sacrilegious to add water to this at all, but God, the fruit on this just cannot be denied. Like now there's some like blueberry pie coming through. Oh, that's just gorgeous. Like, yeah, I'm eating all the fruit pies. Every single fruit pie in the middle of like a cellar that feels like it's going to fall apart from water damage at any second. That's what this smells like and I love it. Spicy, but I mean, I was talking more about the spiciness on these previous two, but this one has a fair bit. It's got some cinnamon, it's got some black pepper. But yeah, I can see why y'all like this. I can absolutely see why y'all like this. It really does. Just it feels like an old world spirit. Like that's what this feels like. It feels like something from the backwoods in France somewhere. All right, on the palate. Oh, that that is a fantastic development. It's you get like this half second of just beautiful, perfect fruit on the front end, and then like wood and spice just swallow it up, and you're like, oh no! But then it turns out to be like the best wood and spice in the world, and just carries through, and like the flower thing, the perfumey potpourri thing is there, and everything just holds and holds and holds. Um, Even the mouth length improves a little bit with water, but so does everything else. Like um, the mouthfeel is more intense now. It's got some of the cinnamony stuff that the second glass is doing. The finish, if anything, feels like it's hanging on even longer. Um, the balance on this is it feels like it's going to fly out of control and the wood is just going to take over everything at any moment, but it doesn't actually happen. And that's really impressive. Yeah, it's yeah. These two have a really high bar to clear after this. I'm gonna try these two and see if they can beat it. But at the moment, this is the best wild turkey I've ever had, ever. Like, um, it's up there with some of the best bourbons I've ever had. I've been able to have little tastes of like stuff distilled, pre-war, pre-prohibition, which are probably better than this. But outside of that, I can't get that deep into the '90s because this isn't really like bending my brain that much yet. But I'll absolutely give this a 90. This is pretty much a perfect bourbon. This is perfection. Here it is. Like if you want like better than perfection, if you want madness, like I'm sure that's out there somewhere. But yeah, this is phenomenal. 90 points for the old gold foil turkey 12-year-old. I'm sure all these have been bought up at this point, but if you see one in the wild, yeah, go for it. Damn. Okay, let's see what the 17 can do after that. Yeah, it's funny. Like this, it's a much older bourbon, right? But on the nose, it feels so much fresher. There's like almost like a sweet potato thing coming out now, which I know doesn't smell fresh, but it does. It's like a sweet potato with a little bit of orange, maybe some lemon squirted on it. Yeah, development. We're maybe getting a little bit of the musty character from the 12 in there now. Just a little hint of like musty cellar. Even a little bit of tamarind coming out now. Yeah, it's a different character. I like this too. On the palate. On the palate, comes across with water very much like it did neat. Let me try this one more time. Yeah, I mean, it's... Nothing has been lost. Nothing has been gained. It's pretty much the same thing. And I like it. I like the kind of, spice cake, coffee cake kind of character to this. It feels light. It feels a little bit edgy. It does not feel like a 17-year-old bourbon. Like, it's not punching me in the face with oak at all. There's a lot of spice. There's a long-ass finish. There's a lot of mouth length, although the 12 kind of surpassed it in mouth length and feel when after I added water, and this is kind of like stayed put. Yeah, it's got all those structural things, but it doesn't feel old and over oaked. It feels fresh. It feels vibrant. I like this a lot. It's score-wise, I'm not gonna get into the stratosphere with this. It's got tremendous mouth presence. I would love to see a little bit more complexity and intensity. Just hit me a little bit harder, But I'm still going to give this 88 points. A very, very, very good bourbon. And let's finish off with this 15-year-old. Which I forget the pricing on the rest of these. I imagine the 17 is stupidly ridiculous on secondary, but this is like retailed at $250 and sorry, retail at $250 or something, and I'm sure it's selling for way more than that at the usual tater bait spots. Again, we're on like overstewed tea and like basil peppermint. So yes, it's not a whole lot of change from pre-water. It still smells like a very woody, intense, modern, but still turkey-ish style of turkey. Yeah, you got the tamarind, that's in there. A little coffee creeping through now. A little bit of like a kind of like a new school espresso kind of thing. Like a little bit of like you're pulling shots with natural washed coffee, that kind of thing. A little bit of that coming through. Okay, on the palate. Well, look at you stepping up a little bit. Okay, so I was... I mean, this was a big boy before I added water, right? It was already doing that. But you could tell, like, if you paid attention, that a lot of that was the strength. Now we've reduced the strength to basically the same level as these. But what has happened is a lot of those... those oils, that texture has come out to kind of even make this bigger than it was at strength. And sometimes that's what happens. Like, Don't think adding water is going to like reduce texture and reduce the burn. Sometimes you get more after you add water, and that's kind of what's happening here. It's actually gotten bigger in my mouth now that I've reduced the alcohol. I mean, definitely the most like modern and kind of decadent and like cherry oaky driven of this trio. So like if you are in a scenario which doesn't exist, but let's pretend you're in a scenario where we're trying to decide between these three, and you are a BTAC fanatic, this is the one you want to buy. It's just hitting those notes better than the rest of these. But it's still a turkey, right? It's still got that weird cologne perfume floral thing, the tamarind thing, which is very. I think that's just like the cherry note you get in a lot of bourbons, plus the weird kind of funkiness, that cologne, grainy cologne thing you get with turkey. I think that's where the tamarind note is coming from. It's some kind of conglomeration of those elements. A little bit of musty wood now. I honestly had the 17 and 15 kind of running neck and neck before water. I think this is winning now. This is winning now. The finish is just a little bit better. No, the mouthfeel is about on par between these two. Mouth length, it might be a hair bit better. And I mean, there is a deliciousness factor to this Russell's 15 that isn't really there on the 17. The 17 is a little bit more kind of edgy in a way that I like, in a way that's kind of appealing for certain kinds of purposes. But if I just want something to like chug with my bourbon pals, 15. Do I give this a plus or a full extra point? I'll give this a full extra point. Let's call this an 89. 89 points for the Russell's Reserve 15. And this is a fun lineup. So your winner, the 12-year-old 101 gold foil, one of the best bourbons I've ever had. Well, at least like modern post 1970s bourbons I've ever had. This is the fruit is just it's killer. But as examples of like modern turkey, these do not do the things I was worried about. They do not get too woody. They do not lose their balance and kind of lose their character through just excessive maturation. These still feel like turkeys. They're just turkeys with a little bit more kind of detail and like corners and that kind of stuff. But if they wanted to try to recreate whatever the hell they were doing with this, I wouldn't be against that either. Thanks for watching, and cheers.